Yeah. Let me click this. Put a palm of that. Not a delay.
Oh, sure. All right, so obviously the first and foremost, most important piece of information. This is a ViewMed instruction, 62209 Bravo. The 9 Bravo part is what made it stand out for me. Healthcare Associated Infection Prevention and Control Program. So it'd be abbreviated as HCAIPC. And that's how the question that I was telling you about was asked. For the HCIPC program, who is in charge of X, Y, or Z? All right, so the purpose is to provide policies and guidelines to naval medical treatment facilities, DTFs, branch med clinics, shipboard, corps and field medical units to establish effective infection control prevention programs. Cancels out 9 alpha and cancels out 6600.1.10 alpha. All right, concepts of the infection prevention and control program apply to all shipboard and Marine Corps field medical and dental units. DoD requires service participation in Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's National Healthcare Safety Network via data use agreement prorogacy. Okay, as of September 2015, or 2010, God, I can't read. As of September 2010, all bedded healthcare facilities, as well as clinics attached to bedded healthcare facility, are eligible for participation in the National Healthcare Safety Network Patient Safety Program. Okay. Program requirements, the minimum written requirements. Program objectives reflecting the MTF-DTF facility philosophy, organization and responsibilities, who's in charge of what, who implements what, a designated infection control person, an annual ICRA, we'll get to that later, an annual performance improvement program, which is pretty much standard for any program that we have on here. Everybody's got to look at it every so often. For training, education should include HAIPC information and orientation programs for new employees, new residents and interns, new medical and dental staff appointees. INDOC annually as needed. So they get it at INDOC, they should get it annually for an updater and as needed. So like you have an event or something like that. Everybody needs to be reminded so we can cover our butts. Okay, ViewMed Infection Control Consultant. ViewMed M35. ViewMed M35. They're responsible for interpreting the policies from Big Navy and then provide guidance for the program implementation. They monitor the implementation and the coordination of the programs. They provide consultation, education, support, and program-related information to the MTFs and DTS. So they are running and regulating the program. And they maintain the database as well. Commanders, COs, and OICs must designate in writing an individual responsible for implementation of the program. At a minimum, each inpatient MTF should have IP position that is a 1.0 full-time equivalent to oversee the infection prevention control program. Additional IPs at a ratio of 0.8 to 1.0 full-time equivalents are advised for every 100, is it 100? 100 occupied acute care beds, or a portion thereof described in reference, and our 1.0 full-time equivalent infection prevention for managing approximately 30 to 40 intensive care unit beds. So where are the beds? Who's taken the exam before? All right, y'all seen questions similar to this? Maybe not on this topic, but how many beds or how many full-time equivalents are required for X amount of beds? That's why that's highlighted in red. I apologize, it seems like I'm reading off the slides. I wasn't slotted to teach this. But, Semper Gumby. Freestanding ambulatory care facilities, including DTFs, also have recommended staffing for at least 1.0 full-time equivalent for up to 200,000 ambulatory care and dental visits per year. It's based on number of visits. Okay, definitions. Communicable disease, it's a pretty standard definition. Critical devices, non-critical and semi-critical devices. But know the difference between those. Okay, break it down as Barney style as you can for yourself. And just know that general, you should be able to look at something really quick. Semi-critical, they contact mucous membranes or non-intact skin. Respiratory therapy, anesthesia equipment, some dental equipment, endoscopes, bronchoscopes, laryngoscope blades, gives you an idea of the type of equipment they're talking about. Non-critical, which is the lowest level. Do not ordinarily touch the patient or touch only intact skin. So the outside skin doesn't get into the mucous membranes, blood, none of that. Skin acts as an effective barrier, so the sterility is not really super necessary. The critical devices have the highest risk of infection. Includes surgical instruments, cardiac and urinary catheters, implants, ultrasound probes. So that's a good way to break it up.
And make sure everybody signs in this computer up here, and then have somebody click save once you're done. So it doesn't, I don't lose it.
Okay, what I like to refer to as dumb. Do I have any dental techs in here? Do you have any dental techs in here? Yeah, you guys got to worry about this stuff? Like, pretty much know it, right? But if you're not a dental tech, it's not going to apply as much. However, for exam purposes, you should probably know that you need to begin each day with a hand wash of 15 seconds minimum duration. Know that 500 colony forming units, I believe there was a question on that as well. That's the key stuff. Okay, unit dose, also a key concept. It's concept of quantity of materials or supplies required to treat a single patient. So what measurement term is used in reference to materials required to treat a single patient? Unit dose. One-handed scoop method for recapping. Flush water and air for 20 to 30 seconds after each patient. Flush and clean the HVE system per manufacturer recommendations is pretty standard. It goes over different materials and the agents used to clean them. Disinfected items should be clearly labeled and the method of disinfection indicated on the work request, DD Form 2322. Dental laboratory work authorization. They will butcher you on forms. They will butcher you on every exam for the rest of your career until you're lucky enough to not take an exam on forms. However, when it comes to testing, you may notice, not with everything, but with some, that the forms, especially the fillable forms, the beginning 4 numbers are the same or very close to the instruction. Just with a slash instead of a dot. A slash means it's a fillable form, right? Town personnel must maintain infection control standards in the radiology area, identical to those used in the DTR. Since standard precautions apply when pressing radiographs to reduce the risk of cross-contamination. Chapter 4 is selected references used in developing this guide. We do this on purpose. I remember. That's the whole point of these, right? We're just hitting the wave tops. If you want to look at the instructions, those are also linked in here. So then go back. Okay, so DD Form 2322. Demo laboratory work authorization. Iodophores, I've seen that. Them asked about iodophores on the exam. Unit dose, that's a big key one, in the 20 to 30 seconds. The 15 seconds of the 500 colony forming units. Both of those I've seen. Non-critical, semi-critical, and critical devices. Communicable disease, by this point, should be a pretty common term to everybody. You should know the general definition. Just be able to separate the non, semi, and critical device by definition. I don't really know that how in depth you need to get into to actually understanding what a 1.0 or 0.8 full-time equivalent is. Just know the names, right? Or know the references, like how many beds, or in the term of DTFs, how many visits per year. The difference between beds. That kind of thing. Oh, and UMed M35, Vice CO's responsibilities. You should be able to separate those out because that was that first question on my exam. Who is responsible for, I forget the exact wording, implementation in MTFs and DTFs. They can word it tricky, right? But be able to separate those out. This is UMed's job, but this is the CO's job. CO of the MTF or DTF. That's really the highlighted main points for me. Any questions, comments, concerns? All right, go ahead and do the quiz, and then we'll move on. What do you got?
IPs, what is IP, like providers? I would look at the instruction real quick and see what IPs is. So all these questions are essentially direct, like copy and paste-ish from the instruction itself. So look at the instruction first.
Oh, so like all of them are
You guys ready for this next one? Yeah? Alright, so this one's going to be pretty quick because everybody, or not everybody in here, but a large majority of people have FMF books, right? So all you have to really do to know this well is know chapter 112 or 113, whatever it is in that FMF book, and this is easy. So P5041, sea burning. So chemical weapons are most effectively employed against untrained or unprotected targets. So what do we use for ourselves when it comes to protecting us, like us and our Marines with chemical weapons? Mop gear, right? So the first thing that you're going to do is if you start experiencing, you know, those signs and symptoms of chemical warfare, which are normally like, the first things you're going to notice is like a runny nose, right? Like unexplained runny nose. Everybody starts having a runny nose, you know that something is in the air, right? If you start having difficulty breathing or guys start dropping, probably best to put on your mouth gear first, right? So you have inhalation, absorption, and then those wounds and abrasions. That's where like all this chemical warfare seeps through. So the two classifications, physiologically and military use. So your signs and symptoms, what the actual chemical agent does to you, and then what the military uses it for. Because, like, for example, if you have like certain types of insecticides, right? They can mimic nerve agents. So that'll be under a physiological action because it can be used in the military, but it's not specifically used just for military use. So you got nerve agents, you got blister agents. So normally the questions that I've seen on the exam are like, which of the following is a nerve agent? And it'll give you a bunch of like different classifications, different nomenclatures for agents, and then one of them will be like sarin or some shit. Normally it's pretty basic. It's not like 3 of them are blister agents and then just one of them is sarin. It'll normally give you like 1 from blister, 1 from choking, 1 from lung, and then 1 from nerve agent. So you have to know at least the name, because it might not break it down into like CG or AC or DP or CN or VX or whatever it is. So your military use, you have your toxic chemicals, which produce serious death or injury, and then your incapacitating agents, which are mind-altering effects. Odor. A lot of them, if you look at the actual characteristics, if you look at the P5041, it gives you a table at the very end where it tells you, hey, these are the physical characteristics. A lot of them are odorless. So you can't think, oh, if I smell something, that's how I'm going to know if I'm getting hit or not. You have to really look at signs and symptoms more so than the odor, because you can be walking through a field and it smells like fucking hay, and it's not hay, right? Or it is hay. Or you can be walking through a field, it smells like hay all of a sudden, and you're getting hit by a chemical agent. So yeah, your mission-oriented protective posture, your mop gear, in the actual instruction, it doesn't go in that chapter 1. It doesn't go down to what each level of mop gear is from ready 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It just says go up to mop level 4 if you feel like there's a chemical agent. So I haven't seen it on the exam, on a 3rd class exam, where they ask you what is mop level 1. But it doesn't hurt to know the different breakdowns for each mop level. Your decontamination area, has to be downwind of the MTF. So I've seen that on the exam. You guys know why it'd be good to have it down past the medical treatment facility, right? Because if you get hit and you're upwind of it, it's all going to get pushed toward that BAS. It's all going to get pushed up to that decontamination area, and then you're just going to have to move it. So that decontamination area is going to move around depending on where the wind is coming from. It's not like it's set here, it has to stay here, right? Or I guess you can move the MTF, but I feel like that would probably be a bigger pain in the ass. Let's see, so extreme weather issues. So if you're wearing full mop gear, has everybody put on like full mop gear to level 4? Well, if you haven't, then it gets super hot. You're basically wearing like a rubber suit, so all your heat stays in. So if it's 110 degrees outside and you have full mop gear, then you have to add that 10 degree, those 10 degrees. So when you're working in mop gear, you're working in 120 degrees, not 110, or 90 degrees, 100. Let's see. All right, so the actual identification. So you use M8 chemical detector paper, right? So it only detects liquids. So I'm pretty sure I've seen an M8 question on there regarding whether what agents it can see. So if anything is vapor based, then it's not going to test it. There's no reason to use M8 if you think that it's a vapor based thing. So more or less, if you see a random puddle and people have been getting knocked out around that puddle, then that's what you're going to test. You're not going to test like anything else. Your M9, have you guys seen M9 paper? It's what you put on a uniform. So like your squads or whoever's walking through fields is going to have that on their sleeves and their ankles. And when they're walking, it'll identify the presence of nerve agents or blister agents, but it's not going to tell you what exactly it is that they've been hit with. So all you're going to know is, hey, there's some chemical agent in there, but you're not going to know what it is. You're just going to divide it down into nerve or blister. And you'll know more than anything because you'll see signs and symptoms of these chemical agents. So the eyes are one of the most important things that you're going to want to decontaminate, because once you lose your eyes, you're kind of useless to the military as a whole. So the decontamination for eyes, it's just going to be water, because anything else that you put in there, so like the wipes that they have with the with one of these skin contamination kits, it's contraindicated in eyes and open wounds. So your eyes are just strictly water. You can decontaminate the skin with the skin decontamination kit, either one of them. And then you can also decontaminate like open wounds with 0.5% chlorine solutions. So this is the different types of odors that you might see. So I've seen like the fresh hay mow grass, like which one of these is, and what is the odor for phosgene, and it'll have like garlic, it'll have almonds, it'll have the hay mow grass, and then it'll say odorless. So that's why, just know the different smells. Know that a lot of them don't have odors. Treatments, the treatment for just strictly lewisite is British anti-lewisite, so it's pretty easy because it's the only one that you can use it on. Alright. It looks like that's all of it. Alright, so the actual, if you actually look into the instruction, right, the instruction, the P5041, that first chapter, all it is introduction. It's not, every single chapter goes more in depth into the individual nerve agents and blister agents and whatnot, but this is just an overall. that chapter makes reference to all the tables that are in there. So there's like table 1.1 that has it breaks down everything into what kind of agent it is, what the sign for it is, what the signs and symptoms, what the treatment is, the odors, like everything's broken down to that little table. Have you guys seen like Mass Sheet Fractors, Ditty Sheet, or whatever? Yeah, so that's like part of that Ditty. It's just a little bit more in depth. And then it also makes reference to a couple of the appendixes that are in there. So just realize that just because it's not in that chapter, you can still get tested on it because it'll come up later on. But you guys have any questions? It really comes, when it comes to nerve agents, it really just comes down to, do you know signs and symptoms, and do you know like the physiological properties of that agent? And then sometimes it might come up with the treatments. I think I've seen the treatments more on the second class exam than I've seen on the third class exam. But yeah, that's like legitimately the whole thing. It's 5 pages long. It's not long at all. And then chapter 23 of the Foreman Manual goes into the medical treatments of sea burning. So if it's in chapter 23 and it's also in this chapter, it's probably a good bet that that's going to be a question on the exam. Because they're basically doubling up the times that this one sentence is being repeated, right? So I would look at chapter 23 as well. Alright, so if you guys don't have any questions, I got to teach the next one, but I got to figure out how to pull it up. So just like 5 minutes and then we'll start the next one. The next one, please. Thank you. All right, is everybody back in here? Probably. All right. So the 6224.8 Bravo is the tuberculosis control program. Like, I don't know, everybody works in different sections or whatever, but it's pretty important, especially green side, because we have to get those annual questionnaires to make sure that nobody's getting risk assessments with their PHAs. That they are getting a risk assessment, but they're not like actually getting TB. I don't know how to make this good. Which one? Yeah, make this through.
Yes,
Thank you. Alright, so again, DMED instruction in 6224.8 Bravo, TB control program. So you have the purpose, which just gives everybody the ability to know what they're supposed to do when it comes to the actual tuberculosis, whether somebody's getting screened for it, whether they're getting re-screened for it, whether they're going to get their medications. So early detection is super important, because if you can find someone who has TB before they start spreading it to everybody else, you'll only have one patient instead of 57. So again, the program tells you how to detect it, treat it, report it, and it protects everybody around you, and it also helps prevent people actually getting it. So the forms, right? So 6224.8 Bravo is the instruction. The first form that you get when you're at boot camp is the 6224/7. So that's your initial. You only get one of those. You only need one of those. After that, you get your 6224/8, which is that annual exposure, the risk assessment exposure. And then the 6224/9 is for people who are getting the actual treatment for TB. And then in your immunization records, your 6230/4, 6230/5 is where it would be in if you've ever actually had the dosing for it. So Mycobacterium tuberculosis is the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, so that'll probably come up in the exam. If it's going to ask a question, it'll ask you what is the actual bacteria that causes TB. So there's a couple ways that you actually test people for TB, right? So you have the PPD, which everybody gets in their arm, right? And then once you get tested for it, how many hours do you have to test it? 48 to what? 72. 72, right? So it's a terrible idea to give somebody on a Thursday, because that means that they're not going to get tested. What if you give somebody a PPD and they come in after the 72-hour mark? What are you supposed to write on their record? Not read, right? And then you have to go through the whole thing again. So screening and testing documented within 6 months prior to reporting aboard. So anybody who's 6 months prior to getting on board of a commissioned vessel is fine. They don't have to get it, once they get on if they've already been tested 6 months prior. All right, so your PHA, doing your PHAs, normally when you do that annual testing, because you're already doing an annual periodic health assessment anyway. So you also have to do it whenever the combatant commanders request it. If there's an outbreak investigation, so more or less you do it during that PHA. You give them the 6224/8, and that's when you normally are going to get it. A lot of times if you're about to go on a deployment and everybody has to get the PHA completed right before a deployment, then you're also going to give them this. If they want everybody to have PHAs as soon as you get back, you're also going to give them this. And that's where, whenever they ask for it is when you're going to do it. So that PPD, that purified protein derivative, it's just the skin test for it. There's actually only one real way to check to see if somebody has active TB or not. Does anybody know?
Chest X-ray.
Chest X-ray, right? So the PPD can be a false positive. So after the PPD, they should get a chest X-ray to actually know whether they have TB or not. All right, so yeah, so it's got to be read within 48 or 70, between 48 and 72 hours. I've seen it on the exam. The indurations of when it's supposed, of what the actual, if you're at low risk, medium risk, or high risk, I've seen those on the exam. So anybody over less than 5 millimeters is low risk, 5 to 10 millimeters is that medium risk, and anybody really above 10 is going to be that high risk. So again, anybody after 72 hours is marked as not read. So don't put 0 or some stupid thing, because you're basically saying that they're negative for it. Negative is also not something that you write, because you can have a false negative. So you can say, hey, this guy, when we read it, it was at 0 millimeters, but you're not going to say negative, because you don't know that without the actual quantiferon blood test or without a positive X-ray. So the quantiferon, the TB Gold, that's the kit that you use to test the blood for tuberculosis. And then the draw stuff is the normal blood lab requirements that you need. So the date, the results, and then the actual interpretation. That's when you get the positive and the negatives. So I've never seen any of this on the exam. One of the biggest things that I've seen in the exam is
Yeah, I was about to say that one has the high risk, medium risk.
Yeah, these are not. Yeah, these aren't right. No. Yeah, if the reaction is less than if it's less than or equal to 5 millimeters, then you're going to be at low risk. If it's at less than or equal to 10 millimeters, you're at medium risk. If it's less than or equal to 15, then you're at high risk, or greater than or equal to 15, then you're going to be at high risk. So it's 5 millimeters and below, low risk, 10 millimeters and below, medium risk, 15 millimeters, and you have a high risk possibility. 15 millimeters and above. anything above 10 millimeters, and you're going to be getting this guy checked. And then part of it comes in with the actual history of the person. So a lot of people, like if they're from other countries, if they grew up outside the United States and they've had other vaccinations, and there are vaccinations that can cause false positives on the PPD, and that's where you get the quantiferon and the chest X-rays. So even pregnant women are supposed to have chest X-rays. Just use appropriate shielding. I've never seen that on the exam. So the isoniazid, the actual medication for TB, that the dates are actually important. I've seen those on the exam, where you have to have, it's 9 months worth, it's 270 daily doses within 12 months. You can't miss more, so do not restart the 9-month daily regimen if at least 270 doses can be administered within the 12-month period. So if they miss more than 30 days, 60 days, right, then they might be okay. The issue is when they miss more than 3 months in a row, even if they've had 5 months already and then they missed 3 months because they went on an appointment and they forgot the medications, they're going to have to restart the whole 9-month process because they have to have it within the 12-month period of when they actually started it. So if somebody has active TB, the Navy Environmental Preventive Medicine units are supposed to find out, or will find out, and the local health department will know as well because they're a risk to the local population. So you got 24 hours to report it. Yeah, who works in a hospital? Who's worked in a hospital? Anybody have a TB patient before, or suspected TB patient? You guys do the N95 mask testing before you work on a ward or something? So they do like fit testing, like they check your face to see what size you are, because the N95 has different sizes for everybody. So if you're around a TB patient, especially if you're like a Greenside guy and you've never had the N95 fit test, then you probably shouldn't get in the same room with him. Because if it doesn't fit you right, you're still going to get the particles in there. And that's the whole thing. Does anybody have questions? One of the questions that I've seen that I didn't see up here is you can do PPD with a live vaccine, right? Because inactive vaccines, like non-live vaccines, aren't an issue. But whenever you are given a live vaccine, there's dates that you can't mess with because it'll mess with the actual PPD itself. So you can give a live vaccine at the same time that you do PPD. But if you give a live vaccine, you have to wait 28 days if you don't give it at the same moment. So there's that 4-week period between giving a live vaccine and doing a PPD test that you have to wait if you did your live vaccine first. So if you know that someone's going to need PPD and you don't have the live vaccine, just give them the PPD, because then you only have to wait 3 days to read it. Or else you're going to have to wait an entire month to do the PPD after giving them a live vaccine. That's why it's good if you're working on medical readiness, that you know everything that that person does and you do it accordingly with what the instructions say you have to do. But just know your forms. The forms are all easy because they go off the same instruction. 6224/7, 8, and 9. Alright. You guys good? H1?
Good.
Yep.
I'm good, you're good, right?
Alright.
Do the quiz.
Anything else?
That's my fault. May or may not have been muted the whole time. That's what you get for sitting in the delinquent classroom. I forgot to mute it. Alright. We'll go back. I'll recap. I don't know why I'm looking at the microphone when I talk. Alright, DHA policy, right? It's got to face the right way, like there's a camera in there. Active duty service members stationed remotely from any MTF may call the DoD-sponsored post-deployment health reassessment call center. So you can call in your provider if there's no major issues. If there's major issues, typically you got to see the provider. But typically it's an over-the-phone deal where you talk to a PA or somebody like that, and they're looking at what you filled out on your PDHA, asking you questions, following up. Is everything good? Yep, cool. Close it out. In an ideal world, that's not always how it works. Reserve members indicating health issues may be approved for one-time line of duty authorization for medical evaluation to determine if the condition which requires treatment exists. So, reserves, by this point, they get back from their deployment, they're done, right? They will do their PDHA before they check off of active duty and go back to their command. It is still their job to follow up with the PDHRA. If they indicate during the PDHRA in the 90 to 180 day window, yep, I have an issue, yep, it's related to deployment, then they issue them a line of duty, and basically it's a way to pull them back on to give them time to get evaluated. So everything's kosher with the TRICARE world at that point. Might be it. Let's see what it's back. Or maybe frozen.
Because the mic got turned on.
Turn the mic on, screw the whole thing up. Alright. While we're waiting for this to figure itself out. DD 2795. What is it? Pre-deployment. 2796. 2900. Post-deployment health reassessment, right? What's the time frame for the 2795, the pre-deployment? No earlier than 120 days. You get tricky with that. Let's say no later, something like that. They like to screw with you on the test, right? So no earlier than 120 days out front. All right, what's the time frame for the post-deployment assessment, the initial one? 30 and 30, right? 30 days before the date you come back, or 30 days after? Anywhere within that time frame. What's the time frame for the health reassessment? 90 to 180 days. It's got to be done inside that 3 to 6 months after mark. That's really the meat and potatoes. What kind of instruction is this? Op now. That's the big thing. All right, you might want to, when you look back into this, look at the responsibilities of UMed, of the CNO. So the instruction comes from the CNO. UMed is their enforcer. And then they have the Naval Public Health Center that essentially ensures the database. Make sure everything runs smoothly. They do a fantastic job. And then if you don't finish it, or you have members or Marines or sailors that don't finish it, that falls back on your CO. And essentially it's you guys, as for example, who may be put in charge of the program, whether in writing or not, that are responsible to the CO. It's a broad overview of the responsibilities. They may get into responsibilities for you guys, they may not. Forms are obviously going to be the big thing. As if I remember somewhat correctly, then we got hammered huge on forms. So watch that kind of stuff. All right, I'll move on to the next one. Go ahead and take the quiz, and we'll move on shortly. Health service support principles are guides for planning, organizing, managing, and executing health service support. Should encompass conformity, proximity, flexibility, mobility, continuity, and coordination. You gotta be able to move, you gotta be able to be within range, you gotta be able to semper gummy it, you gotta be able to move a lot. Got to be able to provide continuity of care, and they got to be able to coordinate and work well with others. All right. Fit and healthy force. That's your Prev Med stuff. That's your MERS. That's your immunizations. That's your HIV draw. That's the thing we just talked about, which is DHA. That's keeping your force fit and healthy. It's also your daily sit call. Spoiler, everybody's knees and back hurts. That's Marine sit call. All right. Health service support focuses on two forms of threat, the enemy and the individual's health. If you're not healthy, you can't fight the enemy. Casualty care management. HSS deploys small, mobile, and task-organized capabilities to provide care. Taxonomy continuum of care includes the following capabilities: policy and resource acquisition, prevention and protection, first responder, forward resuscitative care, theater hospitalization, definitive care, and en-route care. There's different echelons of care in there as well. They're just not in super good order. En route care is transport. Definitive care is back here. Theater hospitalization is your major things. For resuscitative care would be your FRISs and your shock trauma platoons. First responders would be y'all. And then prevention and protection would be the Prev Med piece again. You got to have a policy for everything and know where to get your stuff. All right. That goes over what we just talked about. All right, definitive capabilities at the top. Full range of acute, convalescent, restorative, and rehabilitative care. Back here. Naval Hospital, Portsmouth, Jacksonville, or San Diego. The major ones I think of. Theater hospitalization are modular hospitals with surgical capabilities required to support the theater. Forward resuscitative, forward advanced emergency medical treatment, talked about that. Shock trauma platoons, FRISs, first responder capability, medical care rendered at the point of injury. Once again, that's you all. Prevention and protection, forward advanced emergency medical treatment performed. Okay. And then policy. Okay. The Hague and, I don't know how to pronounce, I'm going to say Hague, and Geneva Conventions of 1949. I know how to pronounce Geneva. I hope. Okay, the conduct of armed hostiles on land is regulated by the law of war. Unless you're in Afghanistan, then only we pay attention to the law of war. It's another subject. It's both written and unwritten. Derived from two principal sources: customs and lawmaking treaties, such as the Hague and Geneva Conventions. Under the conventions, the signatories established the principle of disinterested aid to all victims of war, including those who, through wounds, capture, or shipwreck, are no longer enemies, but merely suffering and defenseless human beings. Unless you can't get to it in time, stay with me. Okay. HSS planning Occurs at all levels of command and organizations across the range of military operations. All commanders are responsible for the health and welfare of their troops. I think that's pretty obvious. CO is pretty much responsible for everything in the long run. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Manual 3122.03 Charlie. I wouldn't worry about that one too much. Then don't even get into that kind of crap. Joint Operation Planning and Execution System, Volume 2, Planning, Formats, and Guidance. Sets forth administrative instructions and directives to develop operation plans. OPLANs. So that's the manual they go by when they're developing their plan for the healthcare continuum in a particular zone after they've briefed all the threats and figure out what's what. Okay. Chapter 3. Operations. Marine Corps Forces, MAR4 commanders are responsible for coordinating and integrating HSS within their area of operations. The MAR4 surgeon, dental officer, med planner, prev med officer, and medical administrative officer advise the commander on all those things. Logistics, patient movement, medical intelligence, planning, sanitation, safety, all that stuff. MEF. MEF's at the top. Underneath is all the MSCs, right? MIG, Vision, MLG, Wing. Okay, the MEF. MAR4 deals with matters more on the operational level of war, while the MEF is more focused on the tactical level. So you have MAR4 HQ, and MAR4 COM, and MAR4 PAC. Underneath MAR4 PAC is essentially 1 MEF and 3 MEF. Underneath MAR4 COM is 2 MEF, which is us. Okay? Those guys at the top are focused on the big picture, operations of the whole scope of things. The MEF gets down to the tactical level. What units are going where, who's doing what, who's supporting what. So on the operational level, MAR4 COM basically goes, guess what? We're doing an advise and assist mission to Afghanistan. We need a FRIS. We need 3 teams. Each team has to have an IDC and 4 corpsmen. 2 MEF, that's on you. When 2 MEF goes, cool, let me look at my assets. And usually it goes, division, you can have this, but you can't support any of this. We don't need any wing assets, because they're spread pretty thin. They're specific, right? They're specific just to the wing for these ground operations. Then they're going to go, MLG, you're responsible for the FRIS, you're responsible for all the AMOLs, and we need 2 providers from you, and we need an IDC from you, and we need 4 corpsmen from you. And both of those MSCs, Division, MLG, usually send back a response via message. It says, okay, we got this. Then they bring together what's called the task force. They send them over. Tactical level. That's pretty long-winded. Okay, health service support beyond the organic capabilities, which is what I just said, of the GCE and ACE, which are the 2 main components, sorry MLG, are normally provided by task organized units of the medical and dental battalions of the MLG. We, in the GCE and the ACE, I'm not part of the ACE, can't do our job without them, because we'll fall short every single time, because the amount of tasking that gets put on us by MAR4 COM. Okay? Requirements cannot be organically supported. The MLG supports. If organic MLG cannot support, they tap into NMAP. It's important to remember, because all of you in the hospital are technically NMAP structured. This is where your IA comes from. Okay, I'll tell you how that works. They used to do it. So, I'm the manning guy for the MAF. I tell MLG, this is what I need. MLG sends back a reclama, we're tapped out, we can't support. I say got it, and I send that message up with a little signature block that says we looked at this, we approve it, they can't support it, we double checked it. That goes up to BUMED and MAR4Com. MAR4Com coordinates with BUMED. BUMED reaches in to the hospitals. Portsmouth, Jacksonville, Paris Island if need be, and this hospital. Any of these areas on the East Coast first, right? Anything that falls technically under MAR4Com for this side of the coast first. They usually don't tap into the other MEFs. That screws you in the long run, right? But they can. And they find, they say, all right, we need Clark. Clark's an X-ray tech, Naval Hospital Camp Lejeune. You guys need an X-ray tech. We're taking him. Mueller, he's an 8404, but he's at the hospital doing a shore rotation. You're going IA. Song, you're going IA too. You guys are now TAD out to this unit. You're going on deployment. That's how that works. So that's a BSO 27, and we are 18. BSO 18 covers Marine Corps, and I think it's 27. Don't quote me on that. It covers blue side. And that's them coming together and going, we got you. Here you go. Mission complete. And then sometimes the NMAP structure runs out, and that's when, if your organic structure's out and your NMAP structure's out, then they have to reach into the other maps. Typically, if it gets bad beyond that, signing bonuses go up. NCIDCs, right? IDCs are a prime example of that. We're tapped out. So we need more IDCs. We need to make that more lucrative. Right? We're 84.5% manned across the entire Navy. Navy says ships take precedence, even though Marines are supposed to take precedence. Doesn't always work that way. Let's pump more IDCs through. Hopefully that works. Signing bonuses go up. Slots are all filled. Missions are all kept. Now we're at like 98.5% is considered balanced. That's where 8404s are at right now. That's why you're not going to see, that's why it fluctuates like this, right? The manning. You ever pay attention to that on Navy Personnel Command website? They have a manning doc snapshot for your whole community. You'll see it fluctuate like this. You know, the Navy gets all excited about recruitment and, hey, stay in, shipmate, and we'll give you this, this, and this, and C schools open wide up, and opportunities open wide up, and then all of a sudden, they shut down because we're balanced. If we can maintain this, cool, but that's almost never the way it goes. Typically, then they wait too long. We fall way down below quota. We get overtasked. Everything gets excited, opens wide back up again. It keeps going like this. So that might be too much information. If it is, I apologize. Ask me questions later. Additional support may be needed from designated casualty receiving and treatment ships, CRTSs, hospital ships, expeditionary medical facilities, U.S. Army combatant support hospitals, U.S. Air Force expeditionary medical support, or MTS of other co-location partner nations. We're using our allies. We're using all the other branches, if need be. Prime example of that, Corpsmen going IA with the Army back when we were kicked up and all excited about Afghanistan and Iraq. Anybody heard about those guys? You go over, you get Army, you're Army for that time being, you deploy with the Army. That's where that came from. Army fell low. They reached out and went, hey Navy, help a brother out. And we did. All right, under the MEF, Marine Air Wing. Same med staff, same planning, but not focused on ACE activities. AMA is comprised of Marine aircraft groups, MAGs, and squadrons. I got any wings in here? See, this is where y'all came to. There was only one in the other classroom. Welcome. Who here came from Cherry Point? That's wild dedication. No offense, new members, but that is wild dedication. Much respect for that. Okay, each group and squadron has a group flight surgeon and several hospital corpsmen. Additionally, a Marine Wing Support Squadron, subordinate to a MAG, has a medical staff comprised of a physician which may be a flight surgeon, and hospital corpsman. Okay, next to them, we already talked about these MSCs, right? So this would be pretty easy. Marine Logistics Group, the MLG surgeon advises the commander on the health and the command of the adequacy of organic MLG HSS. It has cognizance over the operation of the group aid station. The HSSO, Health Service Support Officer, develops MLG HSS plans, coordinates HSS for GC and ACE units, requiring medical and dental support that exceeds their organic capabilities. So again, hey, we're tapped out. We need these slots filled. Where you at, MLG? Roger up. Okay. The Health Service Support Officer serves as the officer in charge of the medical section of the COC during exercises and operations. MLG has the majority of the MEP's medical capability. Med Battalion and 3 surgical companies. That could be one of them questions too. Could be, not saying it will be. Who has the majority of the MEP's medical capability? MLG division or wing, it's going to be MLG. Okay, dental battalion. So now we're going sub into MLG. That's why it's important to know the breakdown, right? If you have an FMF bin, you've gone over this in depth and probably brain dumped it all already, and now it's all new to you again. That's why it's important to know the breakdown, understand what you're talking about, even with CNO, VUMED, things like that. Understand how it breaks down and it'll help you out. MLG provides field dental services to the MEF and advises the commander of dental issues. By attaching task-organized dental sections and attachments to HSS units of the MAGTAF, battalion personnel maintain dental readiness during exercises, deployments, and operations other than war and combatant operations. What's an example of an operation other than war? Humanitarian is a big one. Show of force is another one. Yeah, going to Haiti, right? Operations other than war. Anybody been to Haiti yet? No. Been twice, at least, in the last 3 years since I've been here. In an operational environment, the dental battalion's primary mission is to provide dental health maintenance with a focus on emergency care. MedLog, another subset of MLG. They provide medical supplies and equipment, Class 8, for anybody who hasn't heard that yet, for the MEF and are managed through the Medical Logistics Company, MedLog Co. MedLog Co. maintains the equipment, maintains acquisition, storing, and stock, constructs AMOLs and ADOLs, which is Appendix A, which we're going to go over next. It's exciting. Resupplies HSS units with AMOL and ADOL based on needs. Med Battalion, organized to execute HSS functions to support the MAGTAF's mission. Med Battalion provides initial resuscitative health service supports to the units of the MAGTAF above their organic capability. Overflow of corpsmen is critical to backup mission support. We already talked about that. Each surgical company contains surgical platoons with FRIS, forward resuscitative surgical system. We didn't know that. Shock trauma platoon and a ward and an in-route care system support team. Okay, MLG headquarters. That's pretty obvious. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not 5, 6. Chaplains, PrevMed. Also consists of a surgical company and 2 surge platoons. A platoon has 1 FRIS, 1 SGP, 1 X-ray, 1 lab, 1 ward, 1 in-route care system, and an ambulance section. Again, another breakdown. There's the breakdown. If that helps people, or a more straight visual, you'll be able to pull that up on the PowerPoint as well. Okay, shock trauma platoon, the most mobile medical support platoon of the medical battalion. Serve as battalion evacuation station, reinforce the BAS when the casualty rate exceeds that of the BAS staff, or operate as intermediate casualty collecting and clearing point. The surgical company supports the regimental size operations. It receives casualties from units or individuals providing first response Role 1 medical treatment. These casualties come from you guys. You get the point of impact care. Goes up to surgical company. Forward resuscitative surgical system, your FRIS, is one of the smallest possible units for provision of surgical care to combat casualties. It's comprised of 2 surgeons, an anesthesiologist, an IDC, an 8404, an LO3, and 2 OR techs, Shell 23. Anybody down with the new codes yet? Should be. Should be. You can't get away from it. You're all LO3 alphas now. If you want to make money as an officer, become an anesthesiologist. Because the Navy is always short on them. Always. And they've got to pay them buku bucks to keep deploying. What's up?
How do you spell anesthesiologist?
That way? That way, because it didn't correct me. That's how I know. Thanks, Microsoft. All right. A MEU. Anybody been on a MEU yet? If you want, seriously, from a serious standpoint, the MEU is the one deployment I did during this 3-year period. If you want to enhance your career and just jump up in the Navy world and get all kinds of warfare qualifications and have free time to get all these NKO courses and leadership courses and NRTC courses done, caught up in 7 months, man. Every stated thing done that they look for when they look through your evals for Chiefs exam, knocked out in 1 deployment. Just probably hate this. It's probably Chiefs list. Went from 1 to 4. Always work on your base warfare qualification first. With FMF, you got to knock out FMF first. Otherwise, guys like me are going to be mean and say, no, you can't. You're not approved for surface because you don't have FMF. Use your head, right? MEU is a solid opportunity. Also, you can see foreign countries if you happen to get on the right ship. If you get on the wrong ship, you may be at sea for like 3 months at a time. And learn to quietly hate everyone on ship. It's also where you get to see what it's like when people's internal clocks get thrown off. And it's the hard way to teach Marines that fluorescent light is not the same as daylight. They will stay inside for up to 2 weeks, and that's when they start reporting to medical. Doc, I can't sleep. You got no vitamin D. Your body has no idea what time it is outside. Also, you sleep for 14 hours and do nothing. Because they do. That's why you have all that free time, right? If you can manage your time reasonably well, you can knock out all that stuff I just told you, still have time for Call of Duty, and still be bored 3 hours out of it. It is legit. All right. Back to center. The MEU element deploys with its own organic HSS capability. That's why they have their own buildings, right? Command element. Health service support above this organic level is provided by a health service support detachment. HSSD structure falls primarily under the CLB and includes an emergency physician, physician assistant, critical care nurse, med plans officer, IDC, and LO3 alpha HMs, which is y'all. That's just CLB. And they're real easy to pick out. Because you have the 24th MEU and you have CLB 24. Real easy. Medical specific staff includes shock trauma platoon, headquarters and service company. Everybody's got to bring one of those. Medical logistics company detachments and dental detachments. Tactical situation dictates who goes ashore. Phasing support ashore. This will also come up in a surface warfare pin, if I remember correctly, and I think I do. So, pushing people ashore. The commander, amphibious task force, and his principal advisor The Commander Amphibious Task Force Surgeon have overall responsibility for HSS services to embarked personnel. Could be a good question, right? Who has overall responsibility to getting HSS personnel embarked ashore? Them two, right? Capabilities external to the Marine Air Ground Task Force. Casualty receiving and treatment ships have the largest medical capability of any amphibious ship in the ATF. CRTS medical space includes 4 to 6 operating rooms, 15-bed intensive care unit, quiet room, 45 ward beds, and 6 isolation overflow beds. Dental spaces include general dental operations. Casualty receiving and treatment ships require augmentation by 84 Naval Medical Department personnel. I could also see that being a question. Don't know why it's not in red. Should be. 84. I know it's a question somewhere. Ships suitable for use as CRTSs are the amphibious assault ship, the LHD, and the amphibious assault ship general purpose, the LHA, which just happen to be 2 of the 3 ships that we bring out of MEU. Yeah, all right. The third one being the LPD. It's the mid-deck ship. LHA is the small one, LHD is the big one. Those are the 3 that go out. Quiet room is awesome. It looks like a jail cell. I mean, typically you got to have somebody like yourselves, because I'm not going to do it. Because forget that. Sit outside that room that whole time that dude's in there. And you can kind of see him, but you kind of can't because you need the privacy. But you kind of see him, but you kind of can't. It's private. You're feeling bad about yourself, so I'm going to keep an eye on you. All right, expeditionary medical facility. Expeditionary medical facilities are medically and surgically intensive and deployable in a variety of operational scenarios. Obviously, judging by the deck space, helicopters, right? What's the other thing that could obviously land on there that we see all the time? Ospreys. Augmentation, fleet surgical teams. Our health service support augmentation teams assigned to the combatant commander. Combined, the Pacific and Atlantic fleets have 9 teams. Because these teams come out of the hospitals like we talked about earlier. Atlantic and Pacific together, 9 teams that are considered the combatant commander's assets in both peace and wartime. Health Services Augmentation Program is the means by which medical support personnel are brought to operational units from Navy MTFs. So we've been talking about the whole time, right? That was that process I told you about. Hey, we can't support. Hey, we can't support. BMED goes, hey, you're supporting. That's how you really surprise an HN. Think they're rocking that desk job with TA and going to school? Nope. Have fun in Afghanistan. Health service support AMOLs and ADOLs are arranged in a modular concept. The equipment module contains equipment and reusable material required to establish the basic function of the module. Each AMOL has a consumable block that has a ratio of 1 set of equipment per 2 sets of consumables, with the exception of the FRIS, which has a 1 to 5 ratio. That's pretty specific information. I doubt it. All right. I probably look over this. That's why it's on here, so you guys can pull up these specific informations. That's why we screenshotted it off the instruction itself and put it up there. There's all your AMOL, ADOL numbers. So that later, when you do go on a deployment and they say we need to order from supply, and now that's your job, you have a rough idea of what you're talking about. There's some more of it. All right. Got questions? All right, take quiz, and we'll do next topic. Take breaks as needed.
got 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a wife, right? So when I went home, I just told my wife, like, I'm not at work. I'm not home. I'm at work. So sat down and just did what I had to do. Brought my score up to 64. It's almost 64, 63 point something, and made the advancement by 16 points. So I think it works, but you also have to put the effort in. You can't just go through the course, wait 3-4 weeks, and then expect something else in return. All right, so we're going to go over the emergency ward surgery revision for aeromedical evacuation. Hopefully I can do this right. This button. This button. All right, which one I got to push? Enter. All right, cool. So terms, you got your CASEVAC, your medevac, aeromedical evacuation, and INROC care. So the differences between them all, right? Casualty evacuation is going to be someone that doesn't really have medical expertise, or is going to be like right there on the edge. They're going to get the casualty out of harm's way and start treatment. So you're talking about tourniquets and stuff like that. Your medical evacuation is a little bit more efficient. You actually have some medical personnel, can still be on the battlefield, but you're actually giving some like emergency care to that patient. Then you're also like evacuating them out via vehicle or whatever the case may be. Aeromedical evacuation generally uses the U.S. Air Force fixed wing aircraft, so you're looking at the big one. This, what is it, C-130, shit like that. And they're going to be moving patients, sick or injured, from the combat zone to other places like Ramstein and stuff like that. So more definitive care, larger platforms, more services will be given there. En route care is basically from one place to the other. There it goes. All right, medical considerations for the patient entering a medevac. All right, so when you're going into a medevac phase, which is basically your patient getting transported to whatever care facility you're going to go to, whether it be forward aid station, what is the other one? Forward aid station, CAS, or like where this is in Afghanistan, we send them off to Afghanistan. The patient, you want to have them as stable as possible, or can at least withstand the transport. Is that a requirement? Not necessarily, because the patient needs to get treated at a higher echelon, but it's kind of one of the considerations to look for. All medical intervention is placed and secured. The patient is covered securely with a woolen blanket. Do we use woolen blankets anymore? You guys know what we use in transport? Space blankets, right? Space blankets. It's in here. Remember it, okay? Along with a aluminized blanket. 3 little litter straps are used to secure the patient to the litter. All personnel belongings and medical records accompany the patient. We don't have medical records when you're in combat. Request to transport patients via U.S. Air Force aeromedical evacuation system must also be validated by the theater validating flight surgeon. We'll get more into that too farther in the slides. And then for patients evacuated from a Rule 2 MTF or forward surgical teams, the brigade surgeon determines the evacuation proceedings of all patients requiring evacuation to that facility. All right, implementation, if I can speak, of the aviation environment. So some of the things here, just to kind of note, you want to have your fucking patient dressed and ready for transport, right? So wounds are dressed, casts have been kind of brought up. Decreased barometric pressure, having altitude kind of, oh, this is for equipment, sorry, my bad. So you want to look at your patient really and see what the patient is going to be able to withhold or withstand. So are you going to send a patient up 10,000 feet if they have a bilateral chest wound, tension pneumothorax, they're satting at 80% down, right? Because what happens when you go above 10,000 feet? Oxygen thins out, your saturation, so a normal human being is 98%. At sea level will be at what, like 92, 90% when you're at 10,000 feet, right? So if you have a patient at sea level at 80, or 90, sorry, say 90, they're going to be down to 85, 84 if you're lucky. Not a very good place to be. Patient movement in an NBC environment. So who knows what off-gassing is? A couple of you guys maybe? No? Off-gassing. So when you, this is more just pertaining for the NBC environment. So you look at the kind of chemicals, the biological weaponized systems that they have out there, and a lot of it is gaseous in nature, right? And that gas can stick to the clothing and continue to gas off, especially if you get saturated with that chemical. So say someone has VX, right? VX is one of the most deadly freaking nerve agents there are. Someone's got VX and it's actually like saturated on their clothing, that's gonna off gas for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes just on their clothing, just producing that VX fumes. So if you put them in a small cabin in a freaking, say rotor wing, right? Put them in a small cabin, do you think that VX is gonna affect everybody else? Yeah, that's what off gassing is. So this is kind of one of the things we want to think about. Granted, we haven't had really any kind of NBC exposure environments as of late, but if we look at the next war and it gets bad and bloody and just completely doesn't follow any of the freaking laws of warfare nowadays, just expect that, and you're just gonna have to be thinking about that. I hate to see what like mustard gas and freaking make you blind. Pilots just in there. Alright, so evacuation proceedings. You guys should know to a point, at least, what urgent priority and routine patients are. And then this is basically giving you out for freaking hours of which an urgent patient should be transported out. So within 1 hour, an urgent patient should be on a medevac to a Roll 2 facility or something that's higher echelon where you're at, right? So on and so forth. Reporting. Reporting for a patient for medical evacuation. So the originating physician consults with the local flight surgeon to determine en route care. This kind of gets convoluted. So say you're in theater, right? And you're at a 4-day station, you got a patient who's being transported. The originating physician isn't called the flight surgeon and be like, hey, I was just wondering if you got like a rotor wing that can transport my patient, that'd be great. It's gonna be communicated over the medevac line. So you have a designated medevac line. That medevac line gets pushed out, and the information that you put in that medevac is going to determine whether or not the flight surgeon is going to be able to receive that patient and on what craft they're going to be able to receive it on. Right? So it's not really the physician calling another one asking for help. It's more or less the flight surgeon determining what platform is going to be best suited for the patient. Finish your optimum care, communicate with the physician on treatments with the patient, and plan moving forward within 24 to 48 hours. And this comes in after the patient's been evacuated, continuing that communication, and it's basically for reporting. So talk to the flight surgeon, surgeon says this is what we did, whatever, and this patient's been pushed on this way, and then that information gets trickled back so the command knows what's going on. And then the doctor, the actual physician for that patient, is tracking the care. So patient movement requirement center contact information. This is up here just to kind of give you an idea of like who takes care of who, right? So Eurocom Theater, Ramstein, Air Force Base, Germany, and then PATCOM is Hickman Air Force Base, Hawaii, and then you got Global, which is in Illinois, right? So if we're doing any kind of like crazy medevacs and this patient needs to get, so he's got like a triple amputee, he's been stabilized, he needs to get out of theater, and we're in freaking Iraq, right? The patient is going to be transported to where? UCOM first, because this gives us the highest definitive care, all the accessories and all that stuff for the patient, not accessories, services, clinical services that they can receive. It's going to give us that first one, right? And then eventually that patient might go back to not really Scott Air Force Base, but one up north. Oh my God, what is it called? I can't think of it. But anyway, so that's just kind of like your kind of general information, really. Eurocom theaters and then PACCOM theaters. Don't call those numbers and ask for help. All right, flight surgeon responsibilities. Basically, he has the authority to determine whether patients are physiologically ready for air transport, resource for air medical evacuation system, information, communication, and coordination. I'm trying to think what BS can stand for. Oh, request versus requirement?
Yes.
Not an acronym? I'm assuming. Just the request.
Oh, yeah.
Is versus? Okay. Sorry, I don't see versus as. Alright, request versus requirement. Physicians at originating MTF submit requests for movement, timing, and destination, only validating the flight surgeon and the PMRC invalidate those requests, which then become requirements. The freaking consent for aeromedical evacuation is a medical care event. That's interesting. Validation is a logistical event. That's actually kind of important. Let's see if I can scroll back somehow. Probably not. Oh look, I got a button. You're gonna do it? No, we're just shit out of luck. So when you go back, look on your guys' computers, find that slide again. The last part says it's a logistical consideration, right? That's probably something you might see on the exam, just because it's not really tied into a medical consideration, right? The process, basically the same stuff we just kind of went over. Just a little slip out of the book. Alright, steps 4, United States Air Force aeromedical evacuation patient request. So just list out the steps. Now, things you're going to look at is determine need for critical care air transport team, CAT, and is used for the stabilization of patients who require higher level medical therapy. So essentially, depending on what the patient is getting treated for, depends on what kind of level of care. So there's one specifically for burn transport, there's one specifically for, like say they need ventilation, maybe surgical considerations, depending on like what their injuries are. They go up, it's risky, they take the patient above 10,000 feet, we need to have a surgeon, and that's what they're going to be planning for when they transport the patient. And these definitive teams are structured around providing the best care for the patient when they're in that air transport. So, right here, it just kind of describes CAT. So, a transport that includes those in need of intensive nursing care, constant hemodynamic monitoring, mechanical ventilation, frequent therapeutic interventions, blah, 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 blah. So, that team is developed to try to assist the patient with all those different types of care while in transport. And mind you, this is all on a fixed wing craft, right? So, big ass bird, looks like you open up the back and it's got a hospital. And it's generally where the FRIS kind of operates out of. So the Forward Resuscitative Surgical, whatever services, they kind of bust down the back with a freaking C5, and then they just kind of like set up a freaking forward-aid station right there. They get the treatment, they start doing surgeries and stuff like that, load the patients up, fly off. Indicators for CAT, intubation requires aggressive fluid administration has been reviewed more than 10 units of blood, or received more than 10 units of blood products in the past 24 hours. That's a serious freak patient. Anybody needs increased oxygen requirement, unstable spine, crash development of status. Basically anything that can kill you. Makeup of a CAT. So I would just take the key terms out of there, just basically the positions, not really what they do. All right, humanitarian transport request. Process of arranging routine humanitarian evacuations out of theater can take more than 6 months. So we're talking about the hurricane that hit Puerto Rico, right? That hurricane that hit them, how long it's been taking to treat those patients, get them to a definitive role facility, all that other stuff that goes along with that. That's pretty much why it takes about 6 months to get them sent over, because we can't just like bring them over here and just leave them here. All the children must have an attendant. Is that it? Is that number 15? 15? Cool. Alright. So yeah, basically, aeromedical evacuations is kind of after picture of what we do. I don't know if everybody's in division or where you're at. So the wing guys will know a little bit more about this if the wing's here, because you're going to be doing a lot more of that kind of transportation. And then what we do to set up for that transportation, so treating your patients tomorrow. You guys have any questions? No? You guys about done with the day? Some of you guys are like, oh god. Alright, well, freaking, thank you for your time. Hope you guys study. The test sucks, I know. I've been through a lot of them. Took me 5 years to pick up second, so. You guys have fun.
Alright, somebody's tracking that this is just emergency war surgery, right? There is no OpNav, UMed, number. Emergency war surgery is literally just a book that thickish with 20-something chapters. It only gets thicker. You will see posted, so monitor your little Google Classroom. We post the daily test. Please try to have that done. It's for your benefit, obviously. And then we'll start bright and early tomorrow. No, 10 o'clock late start tomorrow. Sorry.
What
Sorry.
time?
If you can try to get in here like around 7:30, and we're obviously pretty lenient, you know, try to play by adult rules for everybody. So don't abuse that too much, but if you're like 7:30, 7:45, that's totally fine. First half hour is intended for you to rehash those daily tests and quizzes. That's the full intention. Get your brain going in the right direction. Eat a breakfast sandwich, slam an energy drink, whatever you got to do. Okay, that's for you. And then we'll fire up with an instructor around 8. We'll try to accomplish as much as we can. The days will get longer because there's 25 chapters in the Corpsman manual. If you follow. So we want to cover everything for a reason. All right? I appreciate y'all.
Oh,